I grew up in a small, run-down neighborhood, the kind where people barely make ends meet, and the future always seemed a bit out of reach. My name is Emma, and I never really expected much from life. My parents worked hard, but we never had enough. I was just another girl trying to survive, navigating through days that felt like endless struggles. But everything changed when I got the call. The one I never saw coming. It was a lawyer from a city far away, telling me that I was the sole heir to a fortune, the fortune of a woman I barely knew. My grandmother. She had passed away, leaving behind an inheritance that would change my life forever. But here's the thing. I never even knew I had a grandmother. Growing up, there were no stories of her, no visits, no pictures. It was as if she never existed. So, to hear that I was now tied to something I didn't even understand, it was overwhelming. At first, my heart raced as the reality of my situation hit me. I wasn't just a target anymore. I was a pawn. They were watching me, and they were closing in. The next morning, I found a message scrawled on my mirror, written in a substance that resembled blood. Stop or die. That was when I realized I wasn't just dealing with the past anymore. The people who had once controlled my grandmother's wealth were now after me, and they wouldn't stop until I was dead. The game had begun. My life was no longer mine to control. I had no choice but to play along, to try to uncover the truth behind my grandmother's death. I started to dig deeper, contacting people who might know something, old associates, enemies, anyone who could provide answers. But every time I got close, something happened. People went missing. They were silenced. They were gone. I started to feel like I was trapped in a nightmare, each day bringing a new danger. The more I uncovered, the more the pieces started to fall into place. I wasn't just the heir to a fortune. I was the key to unlocking a conspiracy that spanned decades. A conspiracy that could topple the very foundations of society. My grandmother had known what she was doing when she made me her heir. She had chosen me for a reason. But the more I learned, the more I understood that her decision was not a blessing. It was a curse. The people who had been after her were now after me, and they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. One evening, as I sat in the library, I heard a faint noise from upstairs. It sounded like footsteps, but the house was supposed to be empty. I grabbed a flashlight and crept up the stairs, my heart pounding. The air felt thick, suffocating. I reached the top of the stairs, and that's when I saw it. An open door leading into a room I had never seen before. Inside, there was a table covered in strange maps and blueprints, along with photographs of my grandmother. But it wasn't just her in the pictures. There were others too. Men, women, all of them familiar faces. People I had seen in the neighborhood. People I had known my whole life. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. My grandmother wasn't just hiding something. She was protecting something. And now, it was my turn to protect it. But just as I turned to leave the room, I heard a voice, a soft whisper, calling my name from behind. I spun around, but there was no one there. I was alone. Or at least, I thought I was. The voice echoed in my mind, and that's when I realized it wasn't just my grandmother's legacy I was protecting. It was the truth. The truth that someone was willing to kill for. And if I didn't figure it out, if I didn't find the answers, I would be the next to disappear. I knew I was getting closer, but the deeper I went, the more I felt the noose tightening around me. The clues my grandmother had left, the secretive letter, the mysterious chest, it all felt like a maze I couldn't escape. I had uncovered so many dark truths, but nothing prepared me for what was coming next. It wasn't just the mansion that had secrets. It wasn't just the people chasing me or the dangerous game my grandmother had played. It was me. I had always been a stranger in my own life, but now I realized something so unsettling that it sent a chill down my spine. The door to the study had been left open. I didn't remember leaving it open, but when I walked inside, I found something new. On the desk, there was a photo of my grandmother and a man I had never seen before. He was holding a child, a little girl. My heart sank as I recognized her face. It was me. The man in the photo had to have been someone I knew, someone close, someone in my family. But that couldn't be right, could it? I rushed to the photo album where I kept all the pictures of my family, flipping through them frantically. There it was again, a younger version of me, standing in the corner of a picture I had never seen. My head was spinning. I couldn't make sense of it. This was impossible. How could I be in these pictures? A child I didn't even know. My grandmother had told me nothing about this man or about my life before the orphanage. This was a completely different version of my past. As my pulse quickened, I had to get out of the mansion. I grabbed the photo and shoved it into my pocket. But as I stepped toward the door, a voice rang out behind me. "You shouldn't have come back." I froze. I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. It was him, the man in the photos, the one who had been watching me from the shadows, the one who had orchestrated everything. I turned slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. He stepped into the light, and I saw his face clearly. For the first time, it was my father. He smiled, a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've grown up well, Emma. I knew you would. You were always meant to find this place." A shock hit me like a punch to the gut. No, this can't be possible. You're dead. You've been dead for years." "Dead?" He laughed. "That's the lie they told you. I faked my death, Emma. All those years, while you were living in that miserable place, I was watching, waiting. You were always meant to inherit it all." He stepped closer, his voice growing colder. "You think this mansion, this wealth, this life, it was meant for you? You were just a pawn, a backup plan. Your grandmother knew the truth, but she chose to play her part. She protected you, but not for the reasons you think. It was never about love. It was always about power." I took a step back, feeling the walls closing in. The truth was worse than I ever could have imagined. My entire life had been a lie. My father, the man I thought was dead, had been pulling the strings all along. Everything, the mansion, the inheritance, the game I was dragged into, it was all part of his plan. And now I was standing face to face with him, the architect of my torment. "Why?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Why do this? Why destroy everything?" He looked at me like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Because you're the key, Emma. You were never meant to be a victim. You were meant to be the one who takes over. You're the only one who can finish what I started. You've always been my legacy." I shook my head, unable to comprehend the depths of his manipulation.
I'm not you.
I spat, stepping back. I'm not going to be part of your twisted world. His smile faltered for a moment. You don't get to choose, Emma. You never did. Without warning, he lunged at me, grabbing my arm and pulling me toward the door. No, listen to me. You don't understand. You can't stop this. It's too late. His grip tightened, but I twisted free, slamming my fist into his chest. Get off me. The impact sent him stumbling back, and for a moment, I thought I had a chance to escape. But then, I heard it. The sound of footsteps, growing louder, closer. I spun around and saw a group of men emerge from the shadows. More of his people. They surrounded me, blocking my path. My heart raced as I realized there was no way out. My father stepped forward, his eyes cold and calculating. You think you're going to walk away from this? You think you can just run? I don't have to run, I said through gritted teeth. I'm done playing your game. And just like that, everything clicked. The truth that had been buried for so long was finally coming to light. My grandmother's death wasn't just a warning. It was a message that I was not meant to inherit wealth. I was meant to inherit power. And now, it was time to take control. Without thinking, I grabbed the first object I could find, a heavy glass paperweight, and swung it at the nearest man. The glass shattered on contact, and the man staggered back. The others hesitated for a split second, giving me just enough time to make my move. I ran for the door, bursting into the hallway. But just as I reached the staircase, I heard my father's voice behind me. You can't outrun your destiny, Emma. It's always been yours. I turned, just for a second, to face him one last time. His words haunted me, but I wasn't going to let them control me anymore. I ran faster, not looking back. I mean, how could someone like me be connected to wealth? I had nothing. And yet, I found myself standing outside a grand mansion in the middle of a world I'd never even imagined. The lawyer handed me a key to something I never thought would be mine. The house was dark and cold, with grand furniture and walls lined with paintings, some of which I recognized. Strangely enough, they looked like they were from the poor neighborhood I had grown up in. As I stepped inside, it hit me. This house was a puzzle, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. The lawyer handed me an envelope, one that was filled with documents, strange, cryptic letters that seemed to speak of things I couldn't understand. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was far deeper than that. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that my grandmother wasn't just some quiet, forgotten relative. She was someone powerful, someone who had lived a double life. As I burst out of the mansion into the night, I realized something that shook me to my core. The mansion, the money, the game, it didn't matter anymore. It was about who I chose to become. I chose freedom. And nothing, not even my past, could take that away from me. And now, I was caught in it. You see, my grandmother had built her wealth through means I couldn't even begin to understand. She was involved in things, dangerous things, and her death wasn't just an accident. It was no surprise that soon after I arrived at the mansion, strange things started happening. I began receiving anonymous threats. At first, they were just vague warnings. Stay out of it, they said. Leave the money behind. But as the days went on, they grew darker, more menacing. One night, I woke up to the sound of footsteps in the house. I was alone, but someone had gotten inside. I ran to the window, hoping to spot a car, maybe a shadow, something, anything to give me a clue of who was hunting me. But there was nothing. Just the sound of my heart pounding in my chest. I had no idea who to trust anymore. The more I dug into my grandmother's past, the more dangerous the situation became. I started to find out about people she had crossed, powerful figures who would stop at nothing to get what they wanted. People who believed they had a claim on everything I had inherited. And now, they were watching me. I had no choice but to continue unraveling the truth. I had to figure out what my grandmother had left behind before these people got to me first. The deeper I went, the more I realized that I was not just fighting for money or a legacy. I was fighting for my life. One night, as I sat in my grandmother's study, surrounded by her journals and old letters, I found something that made my blood run cold: a list of names. These names weren't just random. They were people I knew, people I had grown up with, people from my own neighborhood. I had no idea what my grandmother's connection was to them, but it was clear now that they had been part of something much larger than I had ever realized. I felt a chill crawl up my spine. This wasn't just about inheritance. This was about a legacy that tied me to a dangerous world, a world that wanted to claim everything. I knew I couldn't back down. I couldn't let them take everything my grandmother had worked for, everything I had just started to understand. But as the shadows closed in around me, I found myself questioning, was I even ready for this? Could I survive this battle, or was it already too late? I had no choice but to move forward, to uncover every last secret, to fight. But in the back of my mind, there was always that question: who could I trust? Who was on my side? And who was waiting for the right moment to take everything from me? I've come to realize that life is never as simple as it seems. What you think you know, what you think you understand, can all change in an instant. And that's when you realize that your survival doesn't just depend on your strength, but on your ability to navigate a world filled with lies, betrayal, and secrets. I may have started this journey with nothing but the clothes on my back, but I am learning that the world is far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. And when everything you thought you knew about your life turns upside down, the only thing that matters is surviving long enough to uncover the truth. I didn't expect my life to spiral out of control like this. But as soon as I stepped into the world my grandmother had left behind, I realized there was no going back. The mansion felt colder every day, more suffocating. I spent hours in that study, poring over her journals, letters, and cryptic notes. Each page I turned only led me deeper into a labyrinth of secrets and lies. But as the days wore on, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just digging into the past anymore. I was preparing for something bigger, something darker. The threats had started to escalate. At first, they were just anonymous phone calls. Their voices distorted, their messages clear. Leave the inheritance alone, or you'll regret it. But now, they were leaving me physical signs: broken windows, graffiti on the walls of the mansion, threats scrawled in blood-red paint. I was being watched. Every corner I turned, I could feel their eyes on me, the weight of their presence pressing down like a vice. It was no longer a matter of money. It was survival. The day I found the key to the hidden room, I knew things were about to change forever. The key was nestled between two old books in the library, forgotten, hidden, as if it had been waiting for me. I turned it in the lock, the sound echoing through the silence, and pushed the door open. What I saw inside made my blood run cold. The room was small, filled with old artifacts, photos, letters, and strange objects I couldn't immediately identify. But what stood out was a large, ornate chest, intricately carved with symbols I recognized from my grandmother's notes. I approached it slowly, my heart racing. There was a small, metallic plate on the front of the chest, engraved with the words, "For those who seek the truth, beware." I hesitated for a moment, but then, with a trembling hand, I opened it. Inside was a collection of documents, contracts, blueprints, photographs, and a small, faded envelope marked with a seal. My grandmother's seal. I opened the envelope with shaking hands, reading the letter inside. It was a confession. She wasn't just wealthy. She was a player in a dangerous game. The money, the mansion, the influence, it all came from one dark deal. She had been involved in something far bigger than I could ever imagine. And now it was my responsibility to finish what she started. But as I read her words, I realized something terrifying. She wasn't just writing to confess. She was writing to warn me. There were people out there, powerful people, who would stop at nothing to make sure the truth remained buried. The deeper I dug, the more I realized I was entangled in a web of betrayal, deceit, and murder. I was now part of something much bigger than my grandmother's wealth. It was a game that could cost me everything. That night, I heard a knock at the door. At first, I thought it was just another threat. But when I opened it, I found a package. Inside was a photo of me, taken from a distance as I sat at my grandmother's desk. I wasn't alone. In the shadows of the picture, a figure stood, watching. I slammed the door shut and backed away.